one of the things I want to convey when it comes to technician type work is we can make it as challenging and as difficult or as easy as we want to. And there's certainly a level of technical component to it that is kind of a baseline, and that's really what I want to focus on here, is a baseline knowledge. And when I look at ski service, wax is part of that. Ski service, there's really three main roles, and they go in this order. First is ski selection, your ability to select skis. Second one is wax selection, and the third is structure selection. And all of those, obviously, once you select a ski, that's pretty much what you got. You can't change that. With structure, structure can be changed day to day. What we tend to do with our World Cup athletes is we have a number of grinders, stone grinders that we work with, but a lot of times what we do is we work with, and you have to recognize that each athlete has about 30 pair of skis, so we're just trying to downscale this a little bit, but they only tend to run about 6 grinds, okay? So for like domestic racing, we recommend maybe 2 or 3 grinds, and the rest of it, what we're doing is we're just hand structuring the skis, and we do that for every single race. So I'll walk through a little bit of that, but I'm going to focus my attention on the wax preparation and the structure preparation, how we would do this in a very simplistic way, day to day. So without further ado, I'm going to start with a pair of skate skis. There are all kinds of brushes. I recommend having 2 or maybe 3. Okay, I think you can really get away with 2 or 3 brushes. On World Cup we use 3, so I mean we can all we try to simplify it there as well. We usually have 3 brushes, 1 for cleaning, 1 for major wax removal, and the other one for polishing. Okay, so some sort of like a brass brush is really popular for cleaning the ski, and so we'll just take a ski that's been used. Literally, this one was skied on today. A little bit of wax left on here. We'll get that off. And we brushed tip to tail. You'll see some people will brush back and forth. I encourage you not to do that with any brush that has any metal or aggressive, because you can pull up P-Tex. So we're just cleaning the base, getting the wax out of there. And in wax selection, I always encourage people to go colder or harder versus warmer, okay? So we always, and this always is actually an always, we always start with some sort of what we call an anti-static or a black type wax. And I think I brought a couple here that we'll lay down a base and the black waxes tend to be hard. We use primarily 2 of them. This one's a little softer, is they're either low or no fluorine in them, but it's an anti-static graphite type base. So I'm going to put this down first, and then we're going to put the wax of the day on. But when you wax, again, we focus on being a little bit on the colder side versus on the warmer side. Okay, so if you have any question on what the wax of the day is, go a little bit colder. There's a couple reasons why. Number 1, colder waxes are more durable. Number two, they're more forgiving. If you're a little bit cold, it's better than being a little warm, because warm will really drag, will really be slow.
Do those black waxes have temperature or no?
Some of them do, but primarily they'll say that they're really cold, but
Ryan, what's your non-fluoro graphite wax you guys like?
well, I mean, we use a couple. This one just happens to be a Skigo. There's a number of waxes out there, but we tend to use really hard ones. So it might not be the company. Like on World Cup, we test everything. Okay, so we're gonna test. You know, our techs are gonna go out and they're gonna test like 6 graphites, and that, I mean, they test everything they do. But so you'll notice this stuff is really hard. I try not to use too many brand names because the companies get a little bit persnickety at me about that. But I just encourage you to use something really hard most of the time, especially around here. You guys have pretty cold snow. This snow in the upper Midwest is some of the fastest snow in the world. It also gets a little colder here than most people are used to. Like Central Europe, this would be a really cold day. If you're in Scandinavia, this is a nice warm day. There's a reason why they're fast, and it's because they're on snow for over 6 months of the year, if not 8 months of the year. So as I do this, one of the things that looking back at growing up here, is that as far as like terrain and conditions, this is I get the opportunity, the privilege to travel around a lot of places, and this is as good as anywhere in the world. If we're behind, and we are behind in the upper Midwest, is with programming, with established programs for our youth, for our juniors, for developing athletes. And that's one thing that we'll see, like that's the main difference between us and Scandinavia, for example. Because this, that's where we kind of fall through the cracks. The East, New England is actually, does a really good job. They have what they call their BKL, or Bill Koch League, and they start their kids, and one thing that from age 1.5, 2 years old to usually 5th grade, but the Midwest is starting to really grow. I live in Hayward. They have 130 kids in their group between 1.5 and 5th grade in Hayward, and they're meeting right now every day. I've been with them the last 2 weeks. From 1 to 3, they have about 130 kids out there. And I know former teammate of mine and individual that I was on the high school team with here in Rhinelander, Noel Versch. Him and his wife started a program in Green Bay. Green Bay, when I was there for college, they had one little youth skier out there. Now they have over 300 or over 100 in their youth program. So those are the things that we need to really establish to get people really motivated in the sport. So there are a number of ways to remove the groove. This is just a little groove scraper. Some people talk about all the time it takes to wax skis. I think the whole point of it is to do it as fast and efficient as possible. When we have a lot of skis to wax, you become really, really fast at this. So I waited a lot longer than I normally would, but I just get a sharp plastic scraper. One of the simplest ways, there are plastic scraper sharpeners, but one of the easiest ways is use a piece of sandpaper, go back and forth. you got to sharp scrape it.
Ryan, you take off cold wax while it's still warm, or do you let it harden?
I let it harden, but I mean, I won't wait forever. I won't. I mean, let it cool a little bit. Make sure you get the sidewalls. And then we just use 2 brushes. Use one brush that gets the main material off.
Is that just a stiff nylon brush? Right?
Yeah, it's a stiff nylon. Yep. And then we use a softer polishing type brush. And all the companies have them, so, but there's like, every company seems to have a million brushes. Like I said, I suggest having 2, maybe 3 max. It's a good marketing ploy, but it doesn't make your skis fast, so.
What about the fine steel for taking that off?
I tend not to use a fine steel. I know some people do. I know my dad liked that. But we have one of our techs on World Cup that likes to do that, but we actually have not allowed him to do that anymore. Because, well, the reason why is not because it's effective, is because we want everybody's skis the same. We want it all done the same. So I just spent way too much time on this pair of skis. Okay, next layer is just a wax. And we always put on a base paraffin of the day.
Is that with no floral then?
This has actually a high floral.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean.
Is there a humidity level that you look at on making your determination on high or low floral?
It's pretty much always high floral, unfortunately. I mean, if you want to have fast skis, that's the reality. But where the higher florals may not be quite as significant is really cold weather.
What is really cold?
Minus 20, 7 degrees Fahrenheit and below, maybe.
Brian, for those of us who aren't really professional with the waxing iron,
Yeah.
how long do you let it sit on the surface of the ski?
Good point. Not at all. I'd rather have an iron cranked way up and move it fast than the other way around. Because you don't want to keep the base in any one spot for too long of a time. And especially with like pure fluorine type stuff. So one of the things I do right away is I never let the wax harden for the grooves. Like any of the skis that I wax for, any of the athletes I wax for, I just scrape the groove right away. I'll let it cool down a little bit, and then I'll scrape it and brush it right away. Any questions while this cools for the next 30 seconds?
When do you add cold powder? What's the temperature?
It's not a temperature thing. It has to do with it is partly cold, but it's primarily when the snow crystals are really fresh. If it's really, like this is borderline, it may or may not be better. But if it was colder, or if it was this fresh snow and colder, but usually it's fresh snow that really you want to have cold powder in. But again, kind of that same spot where I said somewhere around 7-10 degrees Fahrenheit is where you're going to see that help. And usually those hardeners are low floral.
How do you handle it when it's -5? How do you make a ski fast when it's -10?
Structure is the most important thing in that wax.
Do you take your structure out then?
You have to have a really fine grind. Because you can't, even with like steel scraping still put structure in a ski. So like you need to have super fine structure. Structure is more important on the ski when it's cold than the wax. I mean, wax is important, but you need to have a really cold, hard wax. But the structure has to be out of your skis to make them run fast.
But you can't take a structure out that's been stone ground. I mean, even on a cold grind. I mean, I've got a CVO grind from Boulder Nordic, and it's still probably too much structure for when it's that cold. There's nothing you can really do, is there? Other than ski on squeaky?
Or get them re-ground.
Yeah.
Got 30 pairs of skis.
Yeah, I have 30 pairs of skis, right.
Well, that's a point too on structure. It's always better to go less,
Yeah.
just colder. Same with wax. It's always better to, because you can always add structure into the skis, which I'm going to show really soon here. You can always add structure in the day of, but you can't always take all of it out.
So like last year at the Berkey when it was like -5 at the start,
But maybe
were
I'm
the people
mistaken.
skiing on skis that had no structure in them at that point? Or did they
I bet they had low structure and then they rolled some structure in.
Yeah.
Here's one thing, we always add structure, hand structure to skis. Even when we're racing at like what's borderline illegal temperatures, which is -4 Fahrenheit. You know, I'm surprised. If there's any one thing I've learned on World Cup, as far as waxing and skis and stuff, is structure. And the importance of hand structure in skis. So every race, we hand structure the skis, even if it's -3 Fahrenheit. Which, I mean, I know we've had races that cold, we've hand structured the skis.
Well, the temperature might be -3, but the snow is still at -20. You know, or the day before.
It was really cold man-made snow. That was the warmest day of the week. Most of the days it was -40 Fahrenheit in northern Sweden. And just another day in Scandinavia. So, I mean, it got nice and hot that day so we could race. It got up to -3 Fahrenheit. So, yeah, but even at that point, we were hand structured.
Ryan, a new pair of skis, once I had the initial coat,
Yeah.
and I need to add like 10 more coats. Does it matter whether it's hard or just any old wax will do?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so a brand new pair of skis. What we do is we'll add maybe 8, 10, yeah, maybe that's a good number. We'll add like 3 or 4 of really good penetrating, saturating wax, meaning a yellow or a red, something that's really soft. So we want to penetrate the base, we want to soften the base. But then we also want to harden the base. Okay, you guys ever get skis where you're like, especially classic or even skate, where they get white, you get a white spot and then you brush them and it goes right away? Yeah, that's what ski usually that needs to be hardened. So how you harden a ski, so we'll start with the penetrating wax, let's just say a red or a yellow, and then we'll harden it with some sort of hard wax, like a blue. And then we'll alternate from blue to red or yellow. So we'll penetrate, harden, penetrate, harden. So we'll do like 3 or 4 layers of just penetration, and then we'll do harden, soft, harden, penetrate, and then they should be ready to go.
So is this typical?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's for every ski.
Mel's does that on every pair before
Penetrate
they
is the
sell.
last one before the wax of the day.
No, harden.
Okay.
Yeah, harden. And that's what, and then you anti-stat. You always start with the anti-stat. But we don't use an anti-stat to harden the base.
Why not?
But that's a,
Expensive.
well, it's not that it's not expensive, but or that it's expensive. It's just, we found that we've had better results. Everything that we've done, some of the things I can't say why, It's just we test everything we do. So yeah, you know, why is one wax faster than another in a certain condition? I don't know, but we test everything we do. You know, and it's just, well, we'll test every step. You know, and so people like, there's companies at World Cup, they all are there, and they'll come in and they'll hand you a sheet of waxes that they feel is best for the company. We may test them and we may just say, no, we know what, you know. But everything we do is testing. That's the unfortunate part of waxing. Like, sometimes it takes a little bit of testing. But my goal here is just to talk about the fundamentals. But that's what I would do with a brand new ski. And once you've done that, you shouldn't have to do that anymore. For the summer, it's good to put a penetrating wax over it, and just to keep it so it's covered, so the base doesn't oxidize. But you shouldn't have to go back and forth and do that again. Even if you get them reground, sometimes they're pretty much ready to go. You usually don't have to, unless they take just a ton of base material off. But good grinders won't do that. All right, so I put anti-stat, I put high floral blue on, and I brushed with nylon with the polishing. It's ready to go. And for 9 times out of 10, you know, maybe not even a high floral, but this ski is ready to go. I'll just talk through a couple of things as far as kind of the higher end of things, of what we would do for a race scenario. We would always start, let's say 8 out of 10. 8 times out of 10, we'd start with some sort of floral powder over the top of this. And then over the top of the powder, we would put some sort of what we call a top coat. Okay? Whether it be a liquid or a block form. What I would suggest for many of you, and if it's a really important race, that's not more than 30 or 40 kilometers, I would just go to the top coat. I'd go with the race ready base paraffin, and then I'd add the top coat. So that's what I'm going to do with this ski right now. But typically what we would do is we would apply a powder, we'd iron that on, and then we'd brush that off. If it put on too thick, we'll hit a scraper on it real quick and then brush it. We'll just use the polishing brush for the powder, and we'll work that back and forth so we're working it into the base.
Brian, when do you use the roto brushes? Is that just for convenience?
Yeah, it's a convenience thing.
But can you overdo it? Like when you...
Not necessarily. My dad was really into roto corking, and I was really into it when it came to the top coat. This step I'm going to do right now. But a lot of times we'll just use a hand cork. Sometimes on World Cup we'll use roto, and sometimes we'll use just a hand cork. But we'll rub this on the base. This is where maybe being inside would be a lot better. And I don't put a ton of material on.
Do you like the solid or the liquid, or is it just dependent?
Dependent. You wouldn't use a liquid in this type of condition. It's way too cold out here. Liquids are usually around 0 Celsius or 32. Maybe 25 Fahrenheit they'll start to work. But you want to have it so it rotates down, so it pushes it in. You don't want it to just blast back and off the ski. So push it in.
I have one.
Or else just hand cork it on.
You ever use a synthetic cork?
I don't. I just use real cork. For fluoros, you're just using real cork. I've never seen maybe felt will work. And again, the same scenario. We'll just work it back and forth. And now you're going to have one ski that's rocking fast.
Show us again.
There you go.
Now you're gonna do the splits, man.
I know.
Still going around in a circle.
Man, I think you need
Yeah,
to do
go
the
around
other
in
one
circles.
Now, when do you put the liquid on top of that?
It's this or liquid. It's block or liquid. And like I was saying, if it's do we need to step inside? Are we getting too cold?
It is a bit.
Is it going to be warmer in there?
How much you got left?
Do you ever
Well, I was
use like
gonna
a
do
blue and a red block together for that
Absolutely.
in-between thing?
But usually we don't. Usually there's enough testing.
Right, I think you need to step inside so you can warm up.
Yeah. Well, why don't I demonstrate here at Classic and just do kick wax real quick,
Yeah.
and then maybe we can step inside for question and answer. How's that sound? Again, one advantage you guys have living in a nice cold climate is you guys get to use just hard wax, but it's also a crutch for you guys too, because you guys need to learn how to use Clister a lot. It doesn't.
I'll go my wax.
Yeah, see that's the challenge. We get a lot of people that don't know how to ski in Clister, and it's the best classic skiing out there for sure. But it's like, ooh, it's gooey. Well, yeah. Now there's a lot of the places that ski, our ski countries are primarily Clister skiing. And hard wax isn't always used, but we'll just do hard wax because that's what you guys are used to.
What temperature conditions do you use to get into clusters?
All of them, just depending on snow type. Now, if you have really icy, man-made type stuff, when it's really cold, you can usually get away with hard wax. But if it's older snow, you tend to be Clister, maybe Clister and hard wax. If it's newer snow and cold, it's hard wax. It really depends. If it's wet, sloppy, that's where you're going to be warm Clisters. But the only time where it's just pure hard wax is in cold. One thing I encourage everybody to do is start with a base binder. And again, just like we talked about with glide wax, it's always to be better a little bit cold than a little bit warm. And that's straight through when we talk about structure. We talked about structure for the skate ski. That's true with the structure for a classic ski. Although, the difference in classic structure is you always want to have a little bit more structure in classic because you're in a track that gets skied in, and because the track gets warmed up a little bit more. So when they put structure into classic skis, it's always a little more structure than skate skis. One thing I forgot to do, which, can I get that ski back and walk away? Okay, that's fine. No, I'll just do it on this one. You forgot the structure. Yeah. So, the step that I forgot to do was structure. And this is the second to the last step. So right before I put the block on, I would have rolled some structure in. And now there are a lot of tools that you can press structure in, but I highly encourage you, if you're going to use structure, find something that rolls versus cuts, because the tools that cut, they're much more permanent. They're in there. When you press or cut it in, it takes a lot longer. Where something that you just roll in, I can roll this in, and if anybody wants to come and look at this, you can see the structure. And you have to look at it kind of in the sun, but you'll see that it's very, 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 very light. Like right here, you can see. And usually people overstructure their skis, and all we want to do is put just a little bit of structure in the ski. So that's a structured ski. I know I mean, every company has these things, and you can pull out one of them, you can put more in. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of times, you know, especially for conditions like this, we don't want a lot of structure, but we want a little bit in there. So you put this on, you'd rub the block on, and then you brush it out, and you're ready to go. And that's for a racing scenario, right? If you're just skiing most of the time, I'd just put an anti-stat down and some sort of a base paraffin and be on your way.
What does the structure do?
It makes the skis a lot faster. Yeah. I mean, in general, it helps. I mean, moisture retention, even at cold conditions. You know, like if you ran an ice blade over the ice, you know, it creates a thin film. That happens on the ski as well, even in cold conditions. And it just breaks suction. And the warmer it is, the more suction you have. And then that also comes in the type of the ski that you want to have as far as the flex characteristics of the ski, which I didn't really talk about today. I can answer if people want to understand that. I can do that in a matter of 2 minutes. I can explain that. But basically what the structure does is it breaks retention.
So if you want to remove structure, you just re-iron the
I would,
wax?
yeah, you just iron it. And if you had a lot of structure in, it might take a couple of waxings, but that hand structure will come out in a matter of 1 or 2 waxings. That I just
Is that structure going into the wax or going into the
It's
plastic?
going into the base.
Plastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brian, what about the quality of the ski? Do most skis have the ability to take advantage of everything you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like the bases are kind of made out of the same material?
Yeah, most of them, yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously these are all waxable bases we're talking about here.
Right.
One thing is, if you never wax your skis, then the bases get oxidized, and then they harden, and then A, the wax won't penetrate into the base, and B, yeah, the structure probably won't hold in them either. So you want to wax them a little bit. More is better than less, for sure. So once you find your kick pockets, and that's, if you guys have a question on how to do that, I can answer that inside, but we'll do the waxing out here first. I've got a pocket. I like to put a binder down every time we put hard wax on. And again, just like when we talked about glide wax, I like to have a really hard binder. And thin is what you want to do. A binder doesn't mean a layer of kick wax, it means a thin film of kick wax. I didn't put a lot of wax on there. One thing you want to do too with a pocket is you want to use sandpaper and kind of rough up the base just so you've got good adherence for kick wax.
Is that kind of a one-time deal? Like when you first get them, you prep them that way?
What's that?
Is that kind of a one-time deal? Or like once a year you rough them up?
You probably have to do it a few times for sure. I mean, or maybe even every time.
Okay.
Depending. Like this one I roughed up already, so. We pretty much rough the base every time we wax a ski. But we usually use like 150 grit, and we just do it a couple of quick times.
Why are you not using your iron right now?
I don't like to mix glide and kick. And I didn't bring two separate irons. You can use the same one, but you really want to make sure you use a lot of wax remover and get the kick wax off before you use the glide wax. We don't use the same irons for kick and glide. So this is one thing I really make sure that we have the wax completely cooled down. And I'm not going to now for speed of time, but I would make sure we would actually set this ski outside. And most of our kick waxing is actually done outside. Our major layers, like if we do clister, or the base layer is a hard wax, so we would set the ski outside, let the binder completely harden, completely get cold, because we don't want to mix the binder with our hard wax. Because the binder is not a kick, it's not for kicking. It's just to make sure that we can really bind the kick wax of the day to the ski. Okay, so it's a really thin film, fully cooled, and then if we do the waxing, primary waxing inside, we'll do most of it in there, but then for the last layer, if we want to like keep something on top, for example, if I did clister and then I was going to have a hard wax cover, I don't want to mix the hard wax with the clister, so I'll put the hard wax on outside. I'll bring the ski outside, have the clister harden, and then put the kick wax on outside. The nice thing about a day like today, you can do everything indoors and it's super, super simple. Yeah. So I make sure this was completely hardened. Anybody a dentist here? Oh, okay, good. I got it off. I'm trying to use my teeth. Depending on the number of layers. In general, it's better to go more layers that are thin than one big, thick, clumpy layer of kick wax. If you cork back and forth, you mix. If you cork one way, you're keeping that wax on top. I'm only using one kick wax, so and my binder underneath is nice and hard, so it's not going to mix. I'm going to just work it back and forth, get it nice and smooth. I'll add 4 layers, and then I'll let you guys look at it.
Do you use a lot of the MFW waxes that's
Those are good. Those are good, particularly for like high school racing and stuff too, because they have a little more bite to them.
Are they too slow for World Cup?
Most of the time, yeah.
And then
There's a
good for
couple
dirty
of them.
snow?
What's that?
But they're good for dirty snow, like we get with the pine needles and stuff?
Yeah, any kick wax is going to pick up that stuff, you know. The it's gonna pick up dirt. Just the characteristic. But the biggest thing about like just the brand like an MFW's from the start is that it has a little more kicking characteristics. So it's really popular. You know, and it's used. I'm not saying it's not used. It just tends to be a little draggy for most of the things we're doing.
Kinder wax.
So do you always use a synthetic cork on the wax?
Yeah, we usually do. They just seem to be, yeah, they seem to be more efficient. And if you need a little more bite, you can always go a little longer, but usually what you want to do is build up right in front of the toe with a little bit warmer wax. You can start by mixing it in, so I can go a little warmer wax. And I could just add a little bit right under the toe. And I can work that in. And then go ski. So I'll let you guys look at this. That's an okay job. There should never be any clumps in your kick wax.
Had you put the glide wax down earlier, or do you do that
Yeah,
later?
I mean, I showed the glide wax. We would do the glide wax first.
Okay.
You don't glide wax in the middle of your stripes.
No. No. Yeah, I mean, I would glide wax the ski exactly how I did the skate
whole
ski.
ski.
Not the whole ski, I would do the tip and tail. I would do the tip and tail. Now, a question asked, why warm on top of cold? Again, same reason for glide waxes, for durability. We want to have, the colder waxes are much more durable, so they hold on. Now, if we would find that this was now draggy, okay? So all of a sudden, we went a little bit too warm. You could cover it with, well, we like top coat it just like we did with the glide wax with this block, is we top coat it with a little bit harder wax and just cork it one way, and that would give us the top coat to speed up. But typically what we're doing is we're building wax from cold to warm, and if I just needed a little more bite, I'd do it under the toe of the foot, not on the heel. Where we ski, ball of the foot in front.
I noticed you didn't clean the groove. Is that typical?
Here, I corked the groove when I did the binder, but I applied the wax on both sides of the groove. Another trick is if you have really like icier conditions and it's still cold, and you're really concerned about keeping the kick wax on, another little trick with binder is you'd add the hard wax binder and then add 3 drops of blue clister on each side and iron those together. And that gives you a little bit, I did that a couple times for, not last year, but a couple of years prior for the Berkeys, for people that were racing classic. We did just to give them a little bit more binder, a little more bite, and then we just put the hard wax of the day on.
Mixed blister
With the hard wax binder.
with the green
Binder.
binder.
Yeah. It just makes it harder. It makes it more durable. I mean, there's all kinds of tricks, but that's one that is pretty easy.
We used to do what we used to call cushion wax. Put the hardwood soft, glue it on first, put green over it for early and a long grease, and the green wears off. We used to do that.
Not really.
Just tricky to do. You had to heat up the green.
we'll mix. This is primarily what we do. We start with the cold wax. We pretty much every hard wax day. I mean, for our World Cup guys, they always put a binder on. And our techs, I'm not a tech, but our techs put binder every single day, even in training for the athletes.
We used to be afraid of this stuff. Red orange.
Yeah, because it was way too soft.
Yeah, you wear it until you were done.
Yeah.
Do you ever race on just the binder?
Rarely. Yeah, it'll work. It'll work, but rarely. I find that most binder, it may kick, like it's a cold wax and it may kick, but I find it's slow, so I usually put something on it. Should we step inside and answer any further questions?